Okay, let's get into the episode.
Let's do it.
All right. We're back, Second Floor listeners, with your boy Qashus and Khurram. Our boy Kenny isn't here, so I'm doing the intro. I mean, this is, we're just going to keep it low-key as we do.
No, bro, we need to have a freestyle intro to every single time Qashus is in the building.
Oh, he wants me to rap.
I need you to rap.
Just rap. You know what? I should bring my bars. Early morning bars. That's right. But yo, I'm excited, man. I'm working on this project.
Nice.
This project's been years in the making, and I can't wait for the Second Floor listeners, for anyone who's listening to this conversation.
Bro, I remember a sneak peek, and I remember waking up the next day being like, "Damn, I want to hear that song again."
Yeah,
'cause when you get a new song, you remember you feel the vibe of it, you hear the lyrics, and some stick in your head.
Yeah,
but you need a few more listens for everything to kind of flow in, especially when there's a lot of bars in it. And I remember the one that you had. Different flows, different bars.
I feel like my sound is a lot more polished now.
Very.
Like before, I was trying to figure out like my cadence, my flow, like how I would, rap. Because I think just personally, like, there's a difference between rapping and making good music, and I think there's a difference there.
Yeah.
So a lot of guys can rap. Well, you got underground rappers that are amazing, like crazy flows, crazy bars. But to make a song that hits, that has flows, that has delivery, that has production, that is different. And I've learned that over the years of just making music, is like, I don't want to make music just to be like, oh, this guy's a dope rapper.
Yeah.
I want people to listen to my songs and be like, oh man, I need that shit on repeat.
Yeah.
I want that shit on repeat. I want to listen to it and feel like I want to repeat that.
When Rogue One came out,
yeah,
I'm pretty sure I had it on repeat for at least 200 times in a row.
No, I appreciate that, bro.
I remember at the end of the year, when Spotify gives you your most played songs.
Yeah.
Rogue One was way far up there.
Oh, bro, no, that's love right there. And I appreciate you. You've always been a day one. You've always supported and provided also constructive criticism. And for me, it's on the music side of things, I feel like I'm at a point in my life now where, before, I was lacking resources. I wasn't able to, create the music that I wanted to, but I had bars. Yeah. But I didn't have delivery. I didn't have any of these things. And so I feel like all my years of music have led me to this point, and to be able to now be confident enough to say, okay, I'm going to start making like an actual holistic project and start building momentum on that front.
No, and especially the things that you're talking about are different, because before, especially when you're kind of starting off and trying to get a flow and enjoying, it's almost like, what do you talk about? And the only criticism that I always had was, I just want to hear more of a story. Yeah. I thought you were a really good storyteller.
Yeah.
And now as I hear the songs, they all have stories behind them. They all have meaning behind them.
Yeah.
And even like a few years back, like Let It Go, all those different songs.
That was a classic
different vibe. Yeah.
That's a classic. I feel like that song is slept on. But I feel like if I have some dope visuals for that, which I've thought about for years, about like, how do I make like a really dope like short film for Let It Go, because it's this perspective. For those who don't know my song Let It Go, this isn't from Frozen, by the way. This is a song where the first verse is talking about a male's perspective who's Muslim in the Western world and goes through struggles, and then the second verse is a female Muslim who goes through her own struggles. And I've always thought about, how do I create a visual that could potentially even link the two characters together in some way, shape, or form. So I've had this in the back of my head, but I feel like if I make something that's a crazy sort of story that links the song together, I think that would give it more
masterpiece.
Of a yeah. So, but
damn, this is how you know we love music.
Yeah, we just got right.
We're sending each other music in the morning before heading to the pod.
That's right.
And now we're just out here talking not about the topic and all about the music.
I think this is a good warm up though. Going into, what we were chatting about yesterday, emotional intelligence. And I feel,
and by chatting, we mean sending one message saying, all right, see you tomorrow.
Yeah, that's what it is. That's how we work. I mean, I think me, Khurram and Kenny, we're at a point where we could just send each other topics and be like, we're confident enough to get on camera and be on this podcast and start just riffing and talking about certain things. Because I feel like even 4 years of just chatting about certain things on self-development and talking about, I hate using the word self-development because I feel like it's so like motivation and all this shit is so overused today. And the reason, again, I always go back to the reason why we started this podcast, because someone can look at this podcast and be like, oh, they're fucking, motivational, podcast. Oh, they're like every other podcast. But this podcast came from a place of hunger, a place of lack.
Yeah. Because
I was looking for stuff like this and having conversations to get me through a place where I was in a dark place. I had no money to my name, no resources, no nothing. And having these conversations throughout the last 4 or 5 years has completely transformed who I am as a person and my growth in terms of learning and networking. And, I was talking about this to Tanvir the other day, and, the podcast from not direct, because people think, oh, okay, like what are you trying to do with the podcast? You're trying to make money. It's like, no, bro, it's not even about that. The relationships that I've been able to build that have indirectly helped me on my journey from the podcast, has been insane. Like, I met you through this podcast.
Yeah. And now here we are years later, still having the same type of conversations, still learning to grow, and then still experiencing different and having fun with these conversations. Like, anytime I'm in here, I'm not like, man, what's the purpose of this and purpose of that? Sometimes like we just like coming in and having a different perspective on things, different lenses to view from, because we're just driven people. And even like a basketball team, for example, you get to experience somebody's work ethic and see how they are in a whole year, right? You get to see them every day. You see how they show up, what their character is like. Do they make their lines? Do they care about recovery? All those things. So I kind of see like the podcast a little bit more like a team, where weekly we're observing each other, we're learning from one another, and we're getting to see each other's characters over a period of time. And that truly forms that friendship, I'd say, to the next level, because it's really hard to have full trust in somebody unless you see them on a consistent basis. And luckily and indirectly, the podcast has allowed us to be in that same gym together. But at the same time, obviously we've had different like sorts of ways where we can have fun. But I think the podcast is like one of those things where how do we continue to build? And it's less motivation than it's more fun on how do you continue building and how do you continue elevating to the second floor? Yeah,
man. Yeah, no, and that's what it is. And, and another thing too is just being able to stick with something consistently for such a long time. I way back in the day, for those who pre-Qashus days, I was experimenting with video on YouTube. I wanted to be a YouTuber. I wanted to be like, my whole purpose, and I feel like I'm gonna say this right now because I haven't said it online. I've never said this, but I've always had this inclination of being an entertainer. And my one thing that I wrote when I was 15 years old was in my notebook when I used to journal. I wrote, I want to be one of the greatest entertainers of all time. And so it's funny because, I wrote that when I was 15. I'm 30 now. So like 15 years later, I still feel that purpose ringing in the back of my head. And so the podcast, the music, the art, the film, all this stuff I have a deep sense of purpose behind it. And that's what drives me. So I feel like, with the second floor, with stuff like that, it's always about how do we get to that? How do we get to that next level? Because, we come from a small, quote unquote, small town. So nobody expects us to do anything big. Yeah. Right. Who expects Edmonton, like an Edmontonian to, or putting Edmonton on the map, for example. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think about Drake's story a lot because, Drake put Toronto on the map. Right. And imagine what kind of space he's in now to be like, wow. And during that time, I wonder what kind of, like, you think about these things because it's like, man, imagine if Drake was vlogging at the time when he was coming up. You know how many people would watch that? Right? Or, the Kanye documentary. The Kanye documentary, that's crazy. You know, how interesting is it to see a guy who was a nobody to becoming a worldwide phenom? And I'm saying this is because it's like, for me, I find the journey of learning about somebody's journey is very, very not only entertaining but inspiring. Because it's like, how can somebody be like quote unquote nobody in the realm of the public, and then become this worldwide celebrity, and you know, in a different stratosphere? And I feel like we're all going through our journeys, and this is some form of sort of a vlog, in a sense of like, we're in a certain time period, we're in a certain time of our lives, and we have these certain goals and things and ambitions that we want to do. And you know, what's the next 5 years going to look like? What's the next, you know what I mean? And you can look back, and I can look back at my vlogs and my pranks and all the things that I did to try to get on YouTube. And I'm like, you know, that all has helped me in some way, shape, or form.
Absolutely.
From the content. But
damn, man, started from the bottom.
Yeah, we're talking about our stories now. But
I think in terms of talking about stories, all those journeys and relationships that we formed along the way have also helped us deal with emotional intelligence. And I think that's the topic that we have for today. Emotional intelligence, I don't know about you, but every time I moved, and when we first talked about having this conversation, I thought about how I kind of learned emotional intelligence to at least the level that I have it now. And how that happened for me is just constant moving, where you're so used to speaking one language, and then you go to a different country, different language, different country, another different language. So what I was really infatuated with always growing up was body language, because maybe I couldn't necessarily understand what they're saying always, or how they mean it, because every different country has a different way of talking.
Right.
So body language became very big for me. I would always look at like eyes, smiles, and you could feel like the genuineness on like joy on somebody's face.
Yeah.
Damn. I was going to say I need to stop saying because I heard you. That's the other thing. The podcast will expose your ass.
It does. It really does.
I started watching it back. I was like, damn, I say a lot. These motherfuckers are out here, you know, like they got their transition lines intact now. Yeah. You got your hand movements out here.
That's 4 years, bro. That's 4 years.
Hey man, cut my swearing out. I'm tired of my mom watching this and looking at me like you're saying motherfucker all the time on this shit. I'm like, Mom, the podcast isn't for you. Stop watching.
That's funny. Yeah. Yeah. No, we'll reduce on the cusses if we need to. But yeah. Shout out to Mama Sultan though.
Shout out
for the support.
Yeah, she's been watching. She's been enjoying.
Yeah.
Great stories are timeless. To be a great storyteller, one must bridge the gap between an alluring narrative and the audience, to pull at the heartstrings and to shape the imagination. At Q Filmz Media, we're more than just a media production agency. We are a powerhouse of creative individuals, content creators, who specialize in telling great stories. Stories that are intimate and kept closest to the heart. Stories that are powerful and inspiring, that spark boldness and action. We are Q Filmz Media. We're here to tell your story. We are always unseen.
Yeah. But yeah, body language has always been very huge for me. And expressions, there's like a certain form of subconscious reactions that we give that may be different, because I feel like a lot of times I've heard words and I don't really believe in words as much as I believe in actions. And I'm sure you're the same way. But facial expressions, sometimes people just can't hold back. You can see their answers on their face, even if their words are different.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I think, to me, like emotional intelligence, the first way that I really started observing it was just through body language. I don't know about you.
No, 100% body language for sure first, right? I also feel like, you know, this might be going a different direction, but I learned emotional intelligence by getting burnt along the way, growing up as a kid and having certain people in my life who would say things, but then do the opposite. And then I would get burnt or backstabbed or whatever. And that was like, and as a kid or as like, you're growing up, you're like, how could this person do this to me?
Yeah.
How could I not see this? But then when you really start peeling the layers off, you start to see, oh, he indirectly attacked me here. He said this personal attack. He said that. All of this leading to that heartbreak or whatnot. So I think that is one of those things of having now, I guess, after being burnt so many times, you start to see the patterns of quote unquote snakes, we'll call them, right? And you start to you increase your emotional intelligence through literally just getting backstabbed, bro.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I feel like even, this is going off another tangent, but like work related stuff, when you work with people or you work with, you have certain bosses or things like that. And, you start to see patterns and tendencies and you make sure you have your guard up, because you don't know, tomorrow they could wake up and fire your ass. You know what I mean? And so how do you navigate a world where, of course you're being genuine in front, but there might be some underlying things that are happening in the background. And so not knowing that and just being oblivious to be like, oh yeah, everything's all good. He seems like a nice guy. He's being super nice to me right now. It's like, no, bro, like he might have that mask on and you don't know it. So how do you tread through those sort of waters? And understanding that will obviously, help you not get burnt and start strategically doing things that are quote unquote in your benefit. So
I agree. And especially one of Robert Greene's books, I think The Art of Seduction, or is that what it's called?
Yep.
That book, a lot of people have had some negative comments on it, because especially when he's talking in the book, he's talking about victims. And I was like, victims? When I first heard it, the audiobook, I was like, damn, this guy is ruthless in its own way, right?
Yeah.
But then the more I started understanding the book, it's more defense than it is offense, right?
Yeah.
And especially if you're like kind-hearted person, then you'll be able to be more aware of it. And when I started reading those books, I became more self-aware of the scenarios that I was previously in. Because like you said, being burned is one thing, but sometimes you can learn. But if you're self-aware and also want to look into it, how I kind of learned a lot more of the emotional intelligence is obviously experience is one thing. Being in enough rooms where things have happened to you and you've been able to be like, okay, this could mean this or this could mean that. But then having that book really categorize certain things and had me prepared for the next time those same scenarios will come up, because your feelings can make you have a different reaction than what the best reaction may be. Yeah. And if you know the best reaction, it's a little bit easier to move forward. Emotional intelligence, I would argue, is bigger key than even, like, that can get you further in work than the work itself.
100%. I totally agree.
Yeah.
You don't have that emotional intelligence, you're not working your way up the ladder. You know what I mean? And I feel this heavy, because and going back to Robert Greene, even like the 48 Laws of Power, right? This book and like, I mean, all of his books are life changing. Anyone that reads his books thoroughly and who's looking for this sort of material in terms of gaining mastery in your life, gaining tactics that will help you in life. This isn't a self-help book. This is a book where he's literally taking individual stories from like leaders from across history and condensing it into a book and literally picking apart their life and explaining behaviors and tactics and psychology and human nature. That's what I love about those books, man. And one thing I learned is that we're animals, man. Humans are animals. So what does an animal entail? An animal entails all sorts of things, right? And it's not just about being a civil, like we can call ourselves civilized, which we are, but at the primal state, a human is an animal. And so what does that entail? That entails jealousy, that entails envy, that entails hatred, that entails anger, that entails love, that entails sadness, that entails all these sorts of things. Hunger, right? Gaining power, gaining status, all of these things. So emotional intelligence is understanding all of those things, understanding the rainbow, and not seeing someone across from you as the same person as you, and saying, okay, I'm across from this person, but I know that they could have all these different things, and it could harm me. It does. A lot of people are naive to the fact of like, oh, this person was so nice. This person was so nice. He means that he's genuine. It's like, no, like, think of the past behaviors. Think about these things. Peel the onion off a little bit. Mm-hmm. And once you start to see signals, and once you start to see these things from a standpoint of that, then you start to navigate individuals. You start to navigate other people in your life that come to your life, and you start to make better decisions based off that emotional intelligence. And I'm not here acting like a doctor or anything like that. But the fact of the matter is like, when you start to read these books from guys like Robert Greene, mm-hmm. you start to learn these things, and you start to realize like, wow, there is so much more than just a conversation. This isn't just about a conversation. This is about like this. How do you understand the person across from you? Body language, conversation, past behaviors, past things. What are their motives? What are their tactics? What do they want out of you, or out of the people around you, or out of whatever you guys are doing? And once you start to really, really pay attention to that, and a lot of us ignore it because we're just kind of going through our day-to-day lives. So we just ignore it, and it's like, whatever. But if you take the time to pay attention just a little bit more deeper, with a little bit more focus, you start to understand the people across from you way, way more.
It's almost like it's hard to see it backwards, like how you used to see it, once you've seen that clear vision of how somebody could be.
Oh yeah.
It's a crazy feeling that like it's really hard to go back to thinking how you used to think after reading any of his books, especially. I feel like Mushroom Cut helped me have more emotional intelligence too as a kid, because I always wanted to keep the attention off of me, being like moving so many times, always being the new kid. So how I did that was always trying to entertain people in their own way. Keep the focus off of me. See how other people are able to relax, not be on offense and be more comfortable around me.
Right.
And I was always generally curious too. So if I met somebody with a new culture, I'm always asking what their language is, how do they say something in their language. But what I kind of found helped me quite a bit as a kid was just being able to want to try to take the attention off of me and engage in genuine conversation. Mm-hmm. Because then I'm like, I've moved so many times, maybe Japanese culture is fun. Yeah. So I'm trying to say like annyeonghaseyo or whatever, or Korean, sorry. Before the Japanese Korean people get mad at me.
Yeah.
But I would always have a fun time, and I could visually see people's guards go down. And when I started seeing people's guards go down, I started searching more for, how do I get this person's guard to go down? How do I get this person's guard to go down? And when that cycle kind of started, I was so young, I didn't even really think of it like that. But I just enjoyed when other people enjoyed their time around me. And when I started hunting for that, that's when I started noticing that it's not as hard to be around people as long as you're trying to find a way to make each other comfortable. When you come in with the thought process of, this is how I am, I hope they like me.
Yeah.
And I hope they conform to me. Then the emotional intelligence kind of goes out the window.
Yeah.
But when I started thinking, how do I make these people comfortable? Then I could feel like different, because it's not the same answer for everybody.
Yeah.
Every person's going to have a different form of being able to get comfortable. And when you can start nitpicking on finding ways to do that, you learn different ways indirectly. It's not even like I can think of a specific way of how I was able to make him feel comfortable.
Yeah.
It's literally on the spot and having fun.